Okay. Hello everybody, so this is us coming on live for the talk on the 5 transformational benefits of Tantra Hatha Yoga, or at least just 5 that I'm going to mention. So what I wanted to do in this lecture was just kind of introduce, because a lot of people I know that are into Tantra kind of get caught up purely with the sexuality aspect of Tantra. And sadly, the key practice that really makes all the transformation happen, and which helps a lot with the sexuality, is the actual Tantra Hatha Yoga, which is kind of like the stabilizers of all tantric practice. I mean, there is no real tantric practice without Hatha Yoga. Hi Tonica, lovely to see you on board as well. Good to see you. So I wanted to answer a few questions for people, and considering what's going on and what we've been getting fed back in the groups, people kind of are sitting in one of 2 camps at the moment. They're either feeling quite frustrated, having huge bursts of anger, feeling very insecure and uncertain about the future, actually finding they're developing bad habits, like comfort eating being one key one that seems to have come up. Others, as much as they love their family, wanting to strangulate them, the close proximity with somebody, where normally you have your kind of way of working and your space and your time slots and of being together, and suddenly you're forced into that compressed space of permanently being with each other and managing that. So some people are very much struggling with various aspects of this. And then obviously if you run your own business, or you've been made unemployed, or you're worried about where your company are, there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of doubt. And hi Eris, welcome on board from Madagascar. So we've got Eris from Madagascar. Hi Mary from Finland. Mary's on board as well. Lovely to see you. So I wanted to sort of share how Tantra can help with these challenges. Obviously, a lot of you that have been following the practice regularly already are learning quite a lot about the purifications and the practices in that. And then the other camp of people that are out there at the moment are people that are really enjoying this downtime, actually having the space to be off work, having the opportunity to nurture themselves, just to rest and relax and be and come into being, and probably suddenly realizing how little time they are spending normally in the space of being, and having an opportunity to get creative, to do projects, clear out the house, do artwork, maybe even come up and actually start building concepts and ideas for new projects. So much more in a kind of positive aspect. And what are the tools in Tantra that can help people that are in that part of the journey at the moment? How can they harness that and work with that and maximize the potential of these opportunities? And how for other people in these radical times can we try to start to manage and reduce the anxiety or the fear or the frustration or the many different emotions that are coming up for us? So that was kind of the idea behind this evening's talk, Radical Transformation for Radical Times. And so that's kind of the key thing of where I wanted to go, the challenges and the opportunities that are available, and how can Tantra help us in both mindsets. So it's not just, sorting yourself out if you're depressed, or if you're wanting to be a power person and you're wanting to get motivated and you're wanting to harness all that creativity and drive. Also for those people, there's something in Tantra too. It's very, very expansive. It reaches every aspect of our lives. So let's get going then. We're kind of 5 minutes in. Who else have we got on board? Hi Julie, nice to see you. Julie's on board here as well. Welcome. So I'm just saying hi Elkie, lovely to see you too. So as you come on board, just, if you're happy to do so, give us your name and give us your name and let us know. And Rock's just keeping an eye in the background as well. So if anyone is trying to sign into the group because they've left it to the last minute to sign in, then he'll be there to let you in as well. So no problem with that as well. And hi Johnny, nice to see you here as well. See Johnny's come on board. So I guess if we're going to talk about Tantra Hatha Yoga and its benefits, the first thing to do is start with some of the basics. So first of all, what is yoga in its very defined term? And today's perception of yoga is quite simplified, sadly. So people are very familiar with it as a form of stretching. I'm having to laugh because my lovely friend Finn, who normally joins us, her son Blair is staying with her in the lockdown, and he's a very fit young man, does lots of workouts and running and stuff, and he's like, oh yeah mum, I do yoga, I've been doing yoga in London. And she was laughing because she's been doing yoga with me for a while, and so she made him join the classes, and then he was like, oh my goodness, he goes, what I've been doing is some just sort of gentle stretching, you know, of the body, which has been quite pleasant and nice, but it's just been stretching. And there's other forms of yoga where there's maybe a bit more engagement, and they're using certain techniques of breathing exercises and that. And with that comes a sense of balance and harmony to the mind and body. And as I said, I used to practice Ashtanga yoga, not the original ancient Ashtanga yoga, which just actually means the 8 branches of yoga. But the modern one, which is more dynamic and kind of more balletic form of yoga. And sadly with that, there is no evolution spiritually, I have to say. Sadly, that's the case. It's very beautiful and it feels really good to do. I know I did it for 3 or 4 years for about 2 or 3 hours a day. And I loved it and was very devastated to find out that there wasn't any evolution spiritually, because to evolve spiritually you require evolution of the consciousness. And therefore you need to be able to focus and concentrate the mind. So if you're moving in a dynamic yoga, that's not actually possible to do. So what is yoga? What is yoga actually? So yoga is a form of union. The idea is it's a practice, a metaphysical science that was used to help people from ancient times. It goes back over 5,000 years, to help people to purify their bodies. Mainly it was a purification technique and well-being technique. So yes, it has the first step. It's the actual yoga itself is not just the physical asanas that we tend to think about. Yoga itself is much more diverse than that. So yoga includes all sorts of things: breathing practices known as pranayama, concentration techniques, very wide range of meditations. So behind me on the wall you'll see a yantra. And this yantra is a form of meditation as well that we do. They're meditations with sounds. They're meditations using various techniques of concentration, as I've said. Very diverse. And other kinds of practices that actually help us to basically start to evolve the way we think and the way that we perceive things. And the great belief for the yogis is that the cosmos is one, it's one. And in our human form, we're in this separated form. We believe that we are separate and alone and isolated. And our awakening journey is to actually realize that we are part of the cosmos, and that we can actually, with our consciousness, be at one with the cosmos. Whatever you want to call that, universal consciousness, the universe, God, the divine, the creator, mother universe, if you like. Whatever you want to call that, that's fine. But the idea is that there is a wholeness to everything. And I studied biology for many years. It's my degree. And what biology taught me is that you can drill right down to the microcosm of things, and then you can drill right up to the macrocosm of things. And we're all parts and parcels of each other. So if we think we're individual and isolated, well, we're made up of cells and organs, and those cells are made up of molecules, and those molecules are made up of atoms, and those atoms are made up of protons. Each of them could see themselves as a universal separate entity, but they don't. They all function in harmony and unity together, as should we as human beings on the planet be in harmony with the environment around us and actually functioning as part of that. And obviously you can see that we have an impact on our environment, whether it's harmonious or whether it's not harmonious. So yoga itself means union, coming into oneness, and the science of yoga was created to help bring people from this very unaware state, living in an limited perspective of the way that they are, not understanding their full potential of what they can do and achieve and be, to this higher consciousness where they can actually understand and realize all that they're capable of and what they truly are. So an aspect of creation, an aspect of divinity. So an example I might use is that you are actually part of the ocean. The ocean is made of many drops. Just because you're a drop doesn't mean you're not part of the ocean. So you're still within that wholeness. So when we start practicing yoga for tantrics, it's absolutely not just the physical asanas, and Tantra Hatha yoga is also not just physical asanas, right? But what yoga actually does in the practice of yoga, with all these different aspects of it, is that it allows us to develop in four kind of key areas. It allows us to develop in well-being, so it helps to keep the physical, mental and emotional body well, and to purify the body from toxins that we create within ourselves and that we take in from the world around us, and to keep us energized and vitalized, and to allow our mind and our emotions to be in harmony and in balance. The second aspect that it benefits us then is as we bring the different energetic elements of ourselves, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, into harmonization, then it starts to affect our personal well-being and how we behave. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that shortly. But if we start to come into harmony and we're detoxifying, and I'll explain a bit more about detoxifying, then we're starting to resonate with the energies that allow us to feel safe and secure, to feel that we belong, that we are comfortable, that we can be creative, where we feel confident, where we have willpower, where we have motivation, where we have endurance and vitality. And therefore actually eliminate all the fears that we have. But we can also elevate our consciousness to start seeing things from a higher level. And you've maybe heard that, one of the good things to do when you're having a difficult time is to try to step outside of the situation and look from the outside in. Try and see both parties' perspectives, or to take a bird's eye view of the situation, especially like in business. If you're working with a client, don't look at what you want and what you need, but look at what the client requires and try to come above and see what you can look at and achieve from a higher perspective that could benefit both organizations. Well, it's a little bit like that in Tantra. So as you evolve in Tantra and you evolve with the energies and these resonances, so you expand your consciousness to see things from a higher perspective that allows you to see things and make decisions that give you greater clarity and enable you to live life with more ease and grace and harmony, and to be freer of these lower emotions. So that's another aspect. And then we can actually develop aspects of ourselves into what are known as paranormal or supernatural skills. So sometimes people might say, all right, that's talking about the heroes on superheroes, Superman and Spider-Man and this kind of thing, or the Marvel comics. I show my age when I'm going back the way. But actually all human beings have the potential to perceive things at a much, much higher frequency and rate than normal human beings do. Than normally. So we have things like, if you think about a cat can hear sounds at a much, much higher frequency than we do. Just because we don't hear them doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means that our ear can't tune into that. But with practice, we can raise our ability to perceive and hear things at higher frequencies. We can do the same with our sight. We can do the same with our level of perception. And if you learn about the 5 energetic bodies, then actually the idea of telepathy is not that far-fetched. There's absolutely no reason for having a plug-in to be telepathic into AI technology or computer technology, because actually you can develop that yourself so that you can actually perceive and understand how other people are thinking or feeling. But of course that's at a much higher level of practice, so these kind of superpowers, these super sensory abilities. And then finally, last but not least for the yogis, is spiritual growth. So spirituality is something that you're curious about and you're interested in. Then the working and understanding of yoga is taking you to self-realization, to your union with as I said, with the universal cosmos and consciousness, so that you can actually perceive you are in oneness with all things. So they're kind of the 4 attributes that yoga brings, and we can talk about that in more depth. So then, what's the difference then with Tantra? We add Tantra onto yoga. What does this mean? Okay, So we add Tantra onto yoga. So the first thing that most people, when I mention the word Tantra around the world, is they go, oh, right, that's sex. And in the UK, they'll go, that's what Sting does. Or else they think it's something that the prostitutes offer as an extra service, or it's that kind of hippie thing that you do with a goddess and the god, and everyone gets dressed up in hippie clothes and dances around, sort of thing. So it's very interesting, because the definition of Tantra directly from Sanskrit, guess what? It doesn't translate into sex. Nope, that's not the Sanskrit word for sex. What it actually means is web or matrix. And what this means is it's describing that Tantra is the science of understanding the interconnectivity of all things. And if all things in the universe are energy, which we know already from science that everything around us is made up of energy, there isn't anything that isn't made up of energy. These solid things are made up of energy. It's just molecules interconnected together, photons and electrons joining forces and just holding each other together in different forms and different states, but everything is pure energy. And so Tantra understands that the entire universe is made of energy, and that it's totally interconnected. And therefore, if you can understand and learn how energy works in the universe, then you can master yourself and you can master the environment around you. Now, obviously, the aim for a tantric is to actually reach God and to have this self-realization, to come into this place of oneness with all things, where you don't see yourself as separate, where you're unified, as the word yoga means. But what tantrics do differently to most Vedantic yogis is they don't see the energy of the universe as something to be afraid of. So in Vedanta, most things are like, you need to pray to God and you need to reach this universal consciousness. And you want to stay away from everything that pulls you away from reaching God. And in most religions, what they do is they make a universal common denominator at the lowest level, and they call things sins and they tell you, don't do these sins or you'll get punished. So in Christian reality, we have the 7 sins. Well, in Tantra, they would transform that. So instead of having 7 sins, you would actually learn how to be in the world consciously, and therefore appreciating this energetic dimension of creation and harnessing all of this energy to be able to reach expanded states of consciousness and awareness. So becoming your Yodas out of Star Wars, and reach these expanded states of consciousness and wisdom and being, until you actually can merge with all things. So that might sound a little bit far-fetched for most, but let's take it back to more simple steps and levels. So why would we want to do yoga? Why would we want to do Tantra? Well, one of the first things, even if you're wanting to do the sexuality part of Tantra, and have a journey with that, which is amazing and beautiful, absolutely, and to learn intimacy and to learn to relate and to be able to energetically electrify your partner is stunning and amazing and wonderful. But there's so much more. The sexuality teachings are only 5% of tantric teachings, and there's so much more. And even if you're doing that, or you just enjoy the tantric massage and you want to enjoy that aspect of it, even that is limited in your ability to be with it and to work with it, than if you actually start to practice the yogic practice that goes behind it. It's like the idea of wanting to go and arrive at the gym and do a 30-minute workout, having not been in the gym on a regular basis, and you're going to collapse and you'll maybe enjoy 10 minutes of it and the rest of it's hard work and you'll stop, or you won't progress any further. If you go in once a week, that's it, you're not going to progress any further. But if you come in every day, then you're going to progress further. So doing the yoga is a bit like that. It's that commitment to the journey of evolving yourself. And so what happens? Well, if you do the Tantric Hatha Yoga, then you're learning, number one, that you are an energetic being, and you start to understand that you're an energetic being, not in theory, but in practice. Okay, so that you're so much more than just the physical element of who you are, or the mind that's in control of you. And you learn about the different energetic bodies and the whole energetic system, and the 7 chakras, which most of you will have heard of at some point. So also the next part of it is that you want to be able to realize that the way that you are being in the world, for most people, for the everyday person, is incredibly limited. It's incredibly limited. We're driven and ruled by our ego, sadly, in one way. It's there for a good purpose. It was there as we evolved from primitive beings to protect us, fight, flight, freeze mode. That's absolutely super. We need to know we're in danger. We need to be able to escape. We have the limbic brain. We have the amygdala, which lets us know that we're in danger and kicks in straight away. But it's not particularly helpful in modern day times where we haven't got dinosaurs or big saber-toothed tigers chasing us through the woods. And actually what happens is anything that stresses us triggers our limbic brain, and it triggers this ego mechanism response, and it's so automated. So for most of us, we don't realize that and understand it. Some people will have started to do personal development programs where they start looking at how they're thinking and changing their thought patterns and changing their behavior patterns, or maybe through psychotherapy treatment or counseling or coaching, have started to look at that and how they can approach changing those thought patterns. But I can tell you now, having done my journey as a psychologist, psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, and having run my own consultancy in behavioral change and growth for many, many years, working with governments and working with charities and working with international businesses, that this is actually a very slow way, and it's like having to fight to go upstream. You know, it's like you're on the rowing boat and you're trying to row up the stream, not down the stream. And yes, you can make changes and you start to change the neural pathways, but it is actually a much more, it's doing it in a more superficial way. It does work, don't get me wrong, it does work, but it's more of a superficial way. With Tantra, you're starting to learn to work with the energy of your being, and that's what allows you to make changes where you don't even realize sometimes some of the changes that you're going through. And you can start to release the baggage that you're carrying with you. You can put the load down and not have to carry it with you anymore, or try to chip away at it with a pickaxe that you're leaving a little bit behind, but there's still a load more behind it. So when you get triggered again it comes up. Okay, so it allows you to start to understand that your consciousness can change and evolve, your paradigms can change and evolve, and you can start to see things in a very different way. And all this is connected to the resonance of energy. And then the other key thing is you start to realize more and more the aspect of duality of the world that you're living, the polarization of the world that you're living in. And you start to realize about this journey of moving into the oneness, moving into the harmonious aspect. And you start to perceive how that duality works. So to put it very simply, you have a masculine and a feminine element in all things. We're just talking about electricity. You have a negative and a positive mode, or a masculine and feminine mode. So there's a masculine and feminine element to all things. We're talking energetically here, not as a man or as a woman, but as an energy, right? And if you think of it from electricity, the negative element, the feminine, flows towards the masculine, which stays solid and strong, and it's the negative that flows towards the positive. Yeah, so it's a bit like that. You know, the feminine energy is very dynamic. It can be chaotic, it can be turbulent, it can be soft, but it's flowing and it's more receptive. It's receiving and receptive. The masculine energy is much more centralized, focused, emissive. It's like you're in one spot and you're emitting out the energy. And we have these two aspects, and you start to learn how this plays out in every aspect of life, including obviously relationships. So if we're talking then about what happens and why things happen, why do we have all the challenges in life? And all the fears and all the doubts. Well, this has to do with the energy frequencies within the universe and our ego. So as I said, the ego is there created to protect us. And we have basically what are known as 7 chakras in our system. And the 7 chakras relate to the 7 frequencies, energy frequencies in the universe. And we're going to talk about this very briefly and in a very simple and basic way, but this is actually very complex with many subtle layers to it, which is what the journey of Tantra is there to gently introduce you to these concepts from a more simple form, and then expanding your knowledge and your understanding until you're ready to actually perceive the more complicated aspects, the more subtle and complex dimensions of these 7 chakras and this energy system. So in the lower chakras, we basically have 3 lower chakras, and the root one, we'll just stick with the basic words, but the root chakra, where the ego is playing out, this chakra is about survival. So this is really where the limbic brain comes in. And this chakra is, in its positive aspect, it's about having vitality, to be able to do everything, to feel safe and secure in your environment. So if this chakra is in balance and harmonized, then you feel very comfortable and safe about life, and you don't have the same kind of anxieties as somebody who feels a bit threatened about their survival. Do I have enough money in the bank? Will I be able to pay off my debts and loans? Can I have enough food on the table? Will I have a roof over my head? If I fall out with my boss, will they fire me? All these kind of things. I have to stay in this job even if I don't like it because I need to pay for my family. So these create all kinds of anxieties about survival. And this is what comes in, and in these extreme times, if people are feeling safe and insecure, their very livelihood, their very survival, the roof over their head is being threatened, and therefore a lot of anxiety comes up. So this is the chakra that you can work on and energize to release the negative thoughts and feelings and start to empower it, so that you can feel safe and secure no matter what is going on around you. Then the second chakra, or sacral chakra, is about belonging. It's about creativity, belonging, and sensuality, sexuality. It's the emotional chakra. So this chakra is predominant for most people on the planet today, and we have a need to fit in. We have a need to be liked, we have a need to be loved, we have a need to fit in, and we are very emotional beings, and we tend to react to the environment around us. We react to everything. That's why marketing is so successful, because we're on Svadhisthana, most of us, on this sacral chakra. So for most of us, we're following. The marketing works really well. We don't question things. We follow what's going on, and we're more focused on being part of the trend, being part of the fashion. We don't want to not fit in. There may be reasons on Muladhara why, because we're worried about losing our job, but it's also about being accepted in the in-group, in the in-crowd, that kind of thing. But it's also the seat of great creativity. So one of the good things about living in this era of Svadhisthana is there's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of music, there's a lot of vibrancy that comes out of that. And then again, it's also sexuality. But sexuality with emotions, if our emotions aren't in balance, then our sexuality and our relationship, which will be very dramatic, with jealousy involved, with disruption involved, with demanding involved, you don't love me enough, you haven't done this for me, it's very contractual. All right, because it's a need, it's coming from a need. The ego is playing, do you love me enough? Do you not love me enough? Do you really like me? Do you not like me? Can I trust you with this? Can I not trust you with that? That's what's going on at this level. Okay, so then the next chakra, the third chakra, is Manipura, and so this is the navel chakra, and this is really the seat of the ego. So very few people are actually in this chakra, but anyway, the seat of the ego is where, in a good and balanced state, it's about leadership, heroism, self-confidence, willpower, courage. In its negative state, it's very detrimental. It's violence, anger. It's about domination, manipulation, and it can be a dictatorship, that kind of thing, the need to control everything, every element. Very judgmental. Perfectionism can come in here. This is the level where perfectionism can hit. So this chakra is where, if it's in balance, you have confidence and courage and influence. You have the ability to be a leader, to emit energy. If it's weak, then you are maybe more submissive, feeling more repressed, holding things in, or you have a lot of anger, irritation, lack of patience, intolerance, frustration. So we've even seen that the levels of domestic violence have gone up whilst we've actually been in lockdown. So some people getting very creative and other people getting very intolerant as well. So this is where the issues come in, and this is where the challenges come in. So how does Tantra Hatha Yoga work with this? Well, it starts to work on these lower chakras to bring the ego into check, but it's also the journey of the ego since childhood has been taking every single fear we've ever had. So let's take a really common one. As I've sort of said, you could have somebody that's very, very dominant in your life as a child, and everything you did wasn't quite good enough, and you thought that meant that you weren't worthy and that you weren't being loved. When in actual fact your parent loved you very dearly, it's just they had maybe a bit of a controlling nature or a perfectionist nature, a bit of OCD, and they needed everything to be in order. But your childhood perception is, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not loved by the key person I want to be. So you take that pattern forward with you, and you're living that as an adult. And you haven't let go of that, and you might do a lot of work around it, but energetically it's still embedded in you and embedded in that chakra in that way. So we would take that as an emotional and mental impurity. We would call that an impurity. So any trauma you've had, any experiences you've had, any conditioning you've had in your environment will be taken in and held in your being as an impurity, okay, a toxification. Now then you take that to everyday living, and you're also bringing in impurities like stress, because the way that we live in society today, the amount that we need to be online and responsive to people, just gives you an idea of how little time that we truly have had for ourselves and for each other. So that stress also triggers toxification of the body. And then also we live in fairly impure times. If you're living in a city especially, the air is polluted, the water you're drinking is full of chemicals and metals. The food you're eating is mass produced, and they've done tests now and research now that shows that if you want to have some spinach now and you want the same nutritional content out of that cup of spinach compared to 50 years ago when you were farming it in small farms, you need to have 50 cups of spinach to get the same nutritional value as you would have done back then with 1 cup of spinach. That sort of shows you the lack of vitality that's around us and in the food today. So the body needs to purify. Also, the other problem is because we don't really realize that we're energetic beings, and because our bodies have this huge stress on them and the lack of purification, and we've forgotten or we haven't been educated about being energetic, so we're not looking after that body at all. So in Ayurvedic, going back in India, when Tantra and Yoga were kind of first created, there's also the sister science of Ayurveda, which is the medicine looking after the body. And in those days, everybody massaged every day in the family. Everyone knew how to massage, and everyone massaged each other every day to ensure that the energy was flowing in the body and to eliminate any toxins or any impurifications. Yeah, and we don't even do this. We're lucky if most of us go for a massage once a month, if that, and many people don't even do that. Okay, I go off track a little. So yes, so we need to be able to purify the system. And in doing so, we also need to build up the energy, because basically what I'm saying is we've forgotten that we're energetic beings. We don't realize that, and therefore we do nothing to look after that energetic body. So for most of us, our energy channels are really, really weak. Okay, and it's like they're asleep, and it's like, when you've got pins and needles, and then you force, you're suddenly waking up and you need to waken up the leg. Well, it's a bit like that with the energy. You've got channels that are probably very thin and very spindly, not very well constructed because they're not really being used, and you're pushing energy into those channels and they're not really ready to hold that energy. So you need to strengthen them. So it's like working out the physical body, you need to work out the energetic body as well. Okay, so what else? I'm just seeing what I wanted to say here. Done that. Okay, so these lower chakras So these lower chakras are a bit like, there's a lot of energy there, but it's like crude oil. You know, when you drill down into the oil pits, they've got the crude oil, and then they take it to refinery and they refine it. And the more and more you refine the oil, you can end up to the level where it's so refined it's like perfume, and you wouldn't even realize it's oil. But you start off with this thick, gooey sludge of crude oil that's very thick and heavy and dense, and you move to this incredibly beautiful light perfume, which is vaporizing, and you just put a dot on and the whole room is vaporizing because it's so light and so ethereal in its energy. And it's a little bit like that then with these 7 chakras. The lower 3 are very like crude oil, lots of energy probably there, blockages there, impurities there, but it's an energy force. The higher chakras for most people are not activated, and they have very little energy in them. But these higher chakras, the minute you come up to the heart chakra, this is the biggest distance between the navel and the heart, there is no ego at all in the seat of the heart. The heart is everything but ego. This is where unconditional, true unconditional love comes from. And if we're talking about, oh yes, I do unconditional love, I love everyone unconditionally, I hear this a lot around me, and then something happens, somebody upsets somebody and they love them no longer. They're off the happiness list, they've been defriended on Facebook, whatever. You know, one little thing comes up, now I'm never talking to you again, you know, you're a murderer, or something like that. So that's not unconditional love. That's not unconditional love. We have rare glimpses of it. Parents have that element and altruism, for their children. You can maybe have it for a loved one, and we have moments of feeling unconditional love for creation, where we see something incredibly beautiful and we may experience tears of joy or something. So this chakra is much, much higher, and the energy is much lighter and much more refined. And as you go up the other chakras, it's the same. And so this is kind of unconditional love. The throat is about expression and purity and ethics. The third eye is the area of mental concentration and focus, and of the intellect, and of clarity, of being able to see beyond what you think is real. So this is where the consciousness starts to expand. And the final chakra, which represents the halo that you see often with saints, is kind of the gateway to connecting with the cosmic consciousness, the universe. And so at this level, the energy is very, very, very refined. So the idea is you want to push the energy from the lower chakras upwards so that all the impurities are refined, and that you're energizing the higher chakras, so you can come from this higher perspective, this higher way of seeing things, and be much more at ease with the way you approach life, because you're not being hounded by the fears, which we call the impurities, at the lower chakras. So how do we do that? How do we manage to achieve that? Well, this is where Hatha Yoga comes in. So in Hatha Yoga, this is basically the stabilizers of the practice. Okay, so if you're wanting to learn how to feel the energy in your body, purify the body, detoxify the body, build the energy channels so that you can start working with these 7 frequencies and start to purify them, then you start to actually change the way that you see and perceive the world. And as you do the practice, you might not see a lot going on to start with at all, but a lot of changes start to happen, even very subtly and even over time. So I remember a few years back being with my mother. I mean, I've been on the spiritual path for a while before I chose to take Tantra on as my main philosophy and teaching and way of being and my way of life, my belief. And I remember her saying to me, she said, "Mel, do you know what? I'm so grateful that you've been on your journey of personal development, because you've become so much more at ease with life, so much more at ease with people. You have a very honest and open perspective on most things, and you've allowed me to become more at ease with myself and my way of being, and to actually consider how I see things and how I perceive things. And that's been the influence of your journey." So you influence people. And it's not just by the behaviors, but it's also by the energy you emit from your being. If you change your frequency, if you are very heavy and full of fear, you're emitting a very low frequency of energy. If you are more positive, more bright, more confident, more strong, more clear, more of a leader in that aspect, more love, then you will resonate that out into the room around you. And you know, and you see this in everyday life. You walk into some rooms and there's a person in that room and you gravitate to them. You feel drawn to them, you feel attracted to them, you don't know why. And I'm not just talking romantically, I'm also just talking as, you know, a businesswoman at a business meeting, or a businessman at a business meeting. You suddenly just see someone in the room and you feel like they're quite magnetic, they feel comfortable to speak to you, and you're drawn to them. Yeah, there's other people in the room that you see and you think, oh, okay, they're going to be a bit dull and boring. They look like they haven't got that much interesting to say, and I'll avoid them. Doesn't mean you're right, because you could be with a native Stephen Hawkins in the corner of the room. You know, it's just the way that he emits his energy. He may have the intelligence and the intellect to be very interesting. But it's our perception, and we're reading the energy that's emanated. So the energy can be very influential, or it could be very distancing as well. So, what have we got here then? Well, to quote Shivananda, the 5 key benefits of Tantra Hatha Yoga, I'm going to use the Shivananda quote. He wasn't tantric, but he said, realize, purify, and meditate. So I'm going to take these as my first 3 benefits. So, as I said, realizing that there is so much more to the universe around you, that there is a whole metaphysical structure that goes beyond understanding the material world, the physical world around us, and that you are part of that incredibly amazing and wonderful energetic construct. Now that's the first thing, to realize that, and realize that you have this massive potential that you can tap into. Purify. So here we have the opportunity to clear out all the junk that doesn't serve us. Yeah, so we can clean our body out. And to give you a personal example of this, I was doing a lot of practice on a particular chakra for a year, and suddenly I just started to lose weight. And I lost a lot of weight in a year, not badly, in a good way, and I've never put that weight back on again. And what happened was I was cleansing at a particular chakra that was causing me emotional distress. The traumas and the difficulties that I had that are linked to that chakra were causing me different emotional distresses, and I was comfort eating to manage that. Okay, so there are various practices and ways that you combine all the techniques that you can purify the body, release the toxins, stop carrying things, the physical mass of your weight, the emotional burdens, and the mental stresses. You know, some people have really noisy minds, find it really difficult to concentrate, and they're worrying about everything, and that's exhausting. It's exhausting for them, and it's exhausting for the people around them. So that's one way. And then we have to meditate. So to meditate here is where we're developing the concentration of the mind, and through developing the concentration of the mind, not only does that help us in everything that we do in our everyday lives, but it also allows us to start to expand this consciousness, to allow us to expand our perception, our paradigms, and our perspective, to see much more of what truly is. And when we start to understand things from these higher levels, it allows us to have much more ease, as I said, confidence of us, as I said, and ability to move through things with greater clarity, to find solutions, to be creative in that. So the fourth one is growth. It allows us to grow. So this is the other aspect of Tantra Hatha Yoga. It allows us to grow. We do the practices, we use the tools and techniques on a daily basis, and it allows us to grow. So it grows our self-confidence, it grows our dynamicism, it grows our magnetism, it grows our, as I said, our confidence. You take that into relationships, you take that into family, you have much better communication with your family. You're able to polarize in your relationships between the masculine and feminine, and keep a wonderful energy where you help each other to truly be in the element that you're meant to be in. It develops your intellect. It develops your capacity to manage your business, to manage yourself, to manage the people around you. So there's huge levels. It allows you to access your creativity, to develop your inner strength, your inner confidence, and to learn that you have an incredibly innate knowledge within you that you can harness. And when you start harnessing this, you don't need so many books, because you kind of know, you kind of realize things. It's already there. It's like you're tuning into this universal consciousness and accessing this knowledge and information. And the last one is the spiritual realization. So it's very, very difficult to do any form of meditation or Hatha yoga, certainly, without, as you start to realize these dimensions, as you start to realize you're an energetic being, as you start to realize there's so much more about working with the resonances of the energies in the universe and how that can adapt and influence your life for the positive. And as you start to understand much more how the energy works within the polarity and the dynamics of that, then you realize that there is more to life, that there is more to just being here, passing away and dying, and that is it. And you start to realize your soul starts to awaken, your spirit starts to awaken. And for me, when I found Tantra and I did my very first course, for me it was a homecoming. It felt like I was suddenly at home, where people were explaining things to me that made so much sense to me, and I just felt really at home for the first time in myself and in my being. And as I continue to learn more and more of this incredible practice, this incredible way of being, I can only say that again, it just leaves me more and more excited. Don't get me wrong, the journey isn't necessarily easy. The journey isn't necessarily easy, because you have to go through these purifications and you have to face your shadows to come into the light, so to speak. So there is a journey of being a little bit of a warrior in this, and being committed to going through it. So I guess like being put into a really rough and tumble washing machine. You kind of got to deal with a few bruises as you wash everything out, and then you come out and you're bright and shiny, so to speak. I guess is a very simple metaphor for that. So anyway, that's really kind of the 5 key elements and benefits that I perceive: that you have the ability to realize your potential, that you have the ability to clean out all the things that don't serve you, to put down all the luggage and baggage you've been carrying along for far too long, to be able to expand the way you see and perceive the world, and to develop that concentration, to grow as an individual, to grow from your inner world, to be able to influence your outer world, and to be in charge of that journey, and to actually realize that you are an amazing part of creation, and to have that spiritual realization, and then what can I say, connection back into yourself. So they're my 5 benefits. So let's have a look and see who else has come on board and joined us. And if there are any questions, please fire away.